Hello, everyone. This is the Desteni I Process Live Google Hangout, and we are here continuing with our series on Desteni, the Desteni I Process, and the principles that we're applying within the Desteni Group. And as always, you're welcome to ask questions through the Google event page. If you're on YouTube, you have to click on the lower left corner, and that will take you to the Google Plus event page where you can post your question. In today's Hangout, we're discussing the principle of as within, so without, and in relation to that, as the title of the Hangout says, the principle of when I change, the world changes. And so to discuss these topics, we have invited two special guests here with us today. It is Andrea and Kim from the Desteni Farm. Hey, guys.
Hi. Hi.
So like I said, within Desteni and in the Desteni principles, we often talk about this expression of as within, so without. Can you share what that means from a Destonian perspective? Andrea, do you want to go first?
Okay. Sorry about that. So I'll start with that. What that means practically is that what one realizes exists in the world, first of all. So we look at the world and we go, oh, there's hate and there's anger and there's all these things in other people and other institutions. And what one then starts realizing from a Desteni perspective is that you start at some point working with yourself and you see that all of these things also exist within oneself. So as we start exploring self, you see that all of these things, hate, anger, love, all of these constructs exist within ourselves. And therefore, we also can start seeing that when we work with what is inside of ourselves and align that, we can also see how it can change in the world if we change ourselves. So that's basically the principle of it.
Cool. Do you want to add anything, Kim?
Yeah, that's basically, she explained the principle of how the statement of as within, so without is presented by the Desteni Group. So
yeah, and it's not a spiritualized concept, meaning we're not here referring to as within I'm beautiful and love, therefore outside of me is beauty and love. This is more of the reality of what really exists inside of each one of us, to explore and to understand that. And if one starts exploring and understanding that, you actually see that it exists the same in everybody to varying degrees, but it also exists out there as that which we see as a problem. The war and the rape and all of those things exist as external world points to what exists in varying degrees within ourselves. So it's more of a realistic look at if I'm doing it, others are doing it, therefore things that are happening out there like rape and murder is not just happening out there to that guy or in that institution. It starts with each one of us and how we are experiencing ourselves.
Yeah, so it's basically
I'd like to add to that.
Sorry, go ahead, Kim. We have a bit of a time lag here. Go ahead, Kim.
Sorry. So that the reason why Desteni presents it in this way is that the primary point to realize within this is the point of self-responsibility, which is a point that is missed in spirituality, because spirituality will take it from an idea of, if I create an internal world of blissful feelings and I project that on the world that I see with my eyes, then everything's fine because I feel fine. And so the individual doesn't take any responsibility for anything that really exists in this world because they don't want to really consider that maybe my feelings about reality aren't trustworthy. We don't consider wanting to investigate ourselves further, basically. So within Desteni, this point of taking responsibility for everything that exists is basically what we represent.
Yeah, so we could also say that it's also the realization that whatever exists in the world, as Andrea was saying, rape and murder and war, it doesn't just come out of the blue. It comes from within who we are as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how does that relate to the expression that when I change, the world changes?
Okay, well, basically this implies that, first of all, you get to a point where you see and realize and understand by being honest with yourself that how you see the world, or what you see is existent in the world today, is actually existing within myself as well. And when you get to that point, that's where you can start changing who you are as this world, basically, because you start investigating how exactly this world exists the way it is now, because in essence you're investigating yourself as this world. So within that, you're also forming solutions simultaneously. So within forming the solutions, you are changing yourself within and simultaneously changing yourself without.
Yeah, so to give an example, let's say, like linking back to what I said earlier, if I observe, for example, in the world that there are wars being caused by very angry people who are coming together and they're fighting for their rights, and they're angry because their culture is clashing with another person's culture, then I go and observe, okay, this is a point of anger that is manifesting in how these people are expressing themselves and what is leading to these wars. Then I go and look inside of myself, linking to the example that I gave earlier, where I say, okay, wait a minute, this does not just exist in them or in Joe's soap over there, it exists in myself as well, because I can see that I have points of anger coming up, that if somebody takes something that belongs to me, I get angry and I have these thoughts and pictures coming up in my mind of stabbing the person or punching them in the face, and the back chat, the mind going, I'm going to kill you, you took my stuff. So the point there to what we're working with is then working with oneself, as Kim said, to take responsibility for your thoughts and your reactions and what is going on inside, and all the, you could say, energetic experiences that one has built up around why I'm getting angry about that, what does it involve, what are the emotions, the thoughts, the memories involved, and then changing that to become a, you could say, a more stable individual, so that you are not, who I am is not moved by my external factors, which is interesting because, again, it's actually quite an interesting cycle if you look at it, because while I am busy living out and expressing, let's say, for example, anger in this example, the other person, like me witnessing Joe Soap doing it, you know, my outside world, somebody there doing it, Joe Soap, on the other hand, is seeing me getting angry, and he's getting angry, and that's how everything is fueling itself. But what's interesting is what we in the world tend to do as society is, as the individual, I look at others, or I read the newspaper and I go, oh, look at what that bad man did, he hit that man. But it actually exists in me as well in relation to my reaction towards others. And so we blame other people for doing it, and we look at them doing it and almost places up, oh no, it's fine if I do it, but others mustn't do it. And it actually creates a cycling effect. So if you look at, if I change myself by taking responsibility for all of those experiences that exist within varying degrees within myself, then the outside world will change, because if each person changes themselves, this is what we were saying in essence, if each person takes responsibility for and change our internal experiences, then all of us are the other person eventually also. So eventually we're not creating just cycles and cycles like what's happening now in the world, where abuse and violence and everything that exists is just because he did it, I must protect myself against him, her. So everybody's purifying themselves, so I'm purifying myself within, and outside of me that's going to have an outflow of how everybody else responds to me, how everybody else lives. So even if I purify how I accept the system to be, the world system, that's going to have an impact on other people. So even me changing, for example, that I want money only for myself and food and clothing for myself, if I change that within myself, it's going to not only directly change how other people see what is possible as what we can be as the best of ourselves, but they'll be placed in life situations where they can change themselves. So they'll be given the opportunity to also gradually change and let go of anger and hatred. And so on all levels we're changing within, and the outer is changing, and so the outer is changing and the inside actually also. Yeah.
So I remember in the beginning of my process when I learned this, that, you know, oh my God, what is within me is reflected in the outer reality. It was quite a shock. And it was quite difficult to understand initially. How was your guys' experience when you realized this point? And do you have any examples of moments or situations or points where this point where you realized this for yourself?
Okay, sure. So basically, when I realized that what I see with my eyes is me, it's kind of a powerful feeling or experience, if I could put it like that. Powerful in the sense that it's like a very grounding experience or sensation, because for the first time I realized that I don't have to look outside of myself or search outside of myself, or I can't search outside of myself. I can't run in any direction because all directions point to me. So from that perspective, it's like a realization of, okay, here I am, here I stand. Now everything ends and begins with me. So within my very movement, in every moment, it's like I am powerful, because I have the power to, through how I exist and who I am, change and influence and shape this entire reality and world, which is quite an awesome insight and realization, which is basically the principle of how power does not exist without responsibility. Because within having that power to change and influence and shape the world, you are simultaneously aware of the fact that you are completely responsible for your own existence as that world, and because of how your external world influences who you are within yourself.
Yeah. And for me, to answer your question of what was my experience when I first realized this, at first, because I was still a little bit inclined towards spirituality, I had this feeling of this beautiful feeling come up inside me. Oh, that's so beautiful. I'm like one with everything. And then the realization struck of this actually means self-change and self-responsibility. So I actually had this ice cold shock come up through my body. My mind actually said in the form of thoughts, oh no, that means I'm going to have to change. And as the person who was explaining it to me explained, for example, the anger that exists in you, the lust, all of those things, how can you judge other people who are busy living it out in the system when those points exist within you? Look inside yourself. This ice cold shock came up and, oh, I'm going to have to change. I can't now just become this activist who talks about rights about other people. Look at what's happening in the system. I have to now change myself. And an example that I can give you of that is where I was very angry about the world. So even when I joined Desteni, I was like seeing the problems in the world and everything, but I was angry, and I used a lot of rage behind my thought processes of, look at what they're doing. They are doing this. But the energy of it was rage and anger, which had a lot to do with my personality of how I grew up, of having to survive in my own personal situations of abuse and all of that. So the energy itself, even though it was well-intended in those moments and passionate, it was still backed up by a personality of anger, of vengefulness. But I protected it and put it in a beautiful parcel and said, but I'm an activist, so I'm allowed to be this angry. And then the person who was speaking to me at that moment pointed out to me and said, that person over there who's angry, you just read in the newspaper that some guy shot his girlfriend to death, and you're angry, But look at him. In that moment, he was also just angry about what he thought she had done, and he was passionate, and she had done him in. What's the difference? The energy experience that came up that consumed him was the same. So look at yourself. And I did. I then extensively investigated all my anger patterns that came from my youth, where I started then really stripping the layers and looking at, wow, okay, this is me in the totality of myself as anger. Or I did the same with sexuality. I used the examples of sexual energy that consumed me for the desire of sex and relationship, but I was pointing fingers at rapists, going, bad people. So I started investigating myself and changing myself, and there are many examples for me in relation to that. So that's an example for me.
Yeah, I also remember, also in relation to what you were saying, Kim, in how it actually grounds you, that when I was growing up, I always had this outlook on the world that, you know, the world is so big. There's 7 billion people and so many like cities and things and philosophies. And then when you start realizing that who we are is reflected in the world, I suddenly started experiencing the world became small, like the world became familiar, because as you say, it's all me. And then, you know, a couple of weeks ago, I attended this family gathering with my partner, and I was kind of nervous about it. And then in one moment, I looked up and I was like, but why am I afraid of these people? Why am I nervous around these people? They are me. They are like me. You know, they have the same thoughts. They have the same flaws. And it is so interesting that we don't see this. So what would you guys say is some of the problems or the consequences that comes from us not realizing this very basic and quite simple principle? Well, one of the problems
for
could
me,
be.
I would say.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, it was just what you were saying before. What you were saying before about how we tend to point fingers at everyone else. I mean, that's one of the most obvious points of a problem. But what other consequences or problems could it have?
Well, I would say that, I mean, obviously, it is separating us from the problem constantly, which is adding on to what I said earlier, where we're constantly separating ourselves, judging, and then simply saying, it's not my problem. And what happens a lot is that we tend to look at what happens inside of me as the smaller problem. It's okay if I'm addicted to sex. Oh, it's not that harmful. No, it's okay if I have a bit of anger and jealousy. It's not harming anybody. But so what we're doing in that is that we're categorizing experiences and saying, I'm not hurting anybody, therefore it's okay for me to have these experiences. And in that, not actually realizing that we are just the same as that person or institution, but to a different extent. And I mean, the problem that exists globally currently is that the world problems are obviously becoming more extensive. Everybody is looking for quick fixes. People want to give food to the poor. They want to, band-aid solutions over problems. They don't want to look at who was here since the beginning of dawn, the caveman that learned to educate himself. That is actually the cause of the problem. Human society is not this thing that fell out of the sky and happened to us. We became human society through who we are. And that means the world problems just keep escalating. And, it's interesting, even if we watch all these latest movies where they depict people having relationships with robots and things like that, that's where we're heading towards. Literally where you see these movies where eventually Earth is flattened and there's, big robots and things, and humans have become like zombies, literally. Unfortunately, that's depicting where we're heading towards, because the individual just keeps going, no, I refuse. It doesn't matter how bad things get. I mean, we all tend to look on Facebook and the news, and some of us cry when we see the animal abuse, the abuse that's happening to people and children. But in the end, we absolutely refuse to just realize, like you guys were saying earlier, that empowerment that comes from realizing it's me. If I change me and each person changes themselves to what is best, everything changes, which is actually so simplistic. I mean, when I removed the God concept now, because I was also looking for who has the answer, God, is it ISIS, what religion should I belong to? When I removed that and I realized it's me, yes, I realized after that ice cold shock, oh man, that means I'm going to have to change. But as I started walking that, it became easier and easier. It was, as you guys said, so self-empowering, because here it is. Remove all the surrogate, and you need robots and this and that, and brain devices to tap into our psyches. Just change me. Yes, it's difficult, obviously, change me, because you have so many things to work through, but that's the solution. Wow. Yeah.
What problems or consequences have you seen, Kim?
Well, what Andrea was saying was more the global manifested consequences that we can see in our world, and how we as individuals are directly responsible for it. For me personally, consequences of not realizing the principle of as within, so without is, for instance, in my personal relationships, where I can see very clearly that, for instance, how I behave through becoming emotional has consequences. I mean, there have been many times where I've said things to people and I've done things purely out of an energetic movement within myself, wherein I didn't consider this other person as myself, as an equal. And then something happened in the relationship, and later I regretted it, and later I obviously thought that, I wasn't myself, or I didn't know what I was doing, or whatever. But the fact is that because I acted out of self-interest and separation, I created consequences for myself in my life that cannot be repaired. From the perspective that, okay, I can mend relationships, I can make it up, but the memory still remains. The memory of how I separated myself within my thoughts, words, and deeds, and what that created and manifested in physical reality that can be seen by everything and everyone in existence. I mean, and that's very painful to realize, that everything you do is a physical memory. And so, you have to at some point start taking responsibility for your actions in physical reality, and for the fact that if you don't treat physical reality in an equal manner to yourself, you're going to make a representation of yourself in this world that is not worthy of life. Something that everyone and everything can see of who you actually are as a being.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And we can also flip the principle around and see it even more clearly by saying that if I don't change, the world cannot change. So that is quite like an invitation to actually start changing, because we all see, I mean, it's obvious that the world has to change, but like you were saying, Andrea, we're always waiting for some God figure to go and do it. Guys, we have a question from Marcena. So let me read that out loud. Hello, ladies. Just want to ask if you can elaborate more on how important it is for one to participate in the group of people who walk the process, not from the perspective to be different, but from perspective of support. So we could relate this to the topic of as within, so without, and if for me to or for the world to change, I have to change. So how would you guys answer that? How important is it to walk with a group of people who are walking this process of self-change?
Well, you know what I realized in the beginning? What I realized about how important it is for me to have a support base was, as I started exploring my mind or my internal experience, I started realizing that my mind was interfering and providing the answers. I was still very much as the mind. I was trying to understand the mind. So what helped then is to have that cross-reference point with another person or persons, so that as you're even writing out your internal experience and you're assessing and you're looking from this side and that side, you are missing many of the dimensions around what is going on with you by people that have, for example, walked the same point, or have either mastered some of the tools themselves or still learning it, but they've they've questioned many of the points themselves. So by going in it alone, what I've often found is then one tends to look at things according to your own personality design. So as an example, I'll bring in the anger point again. I got triggered in the beginning when I was working with my own points. The anger personality would come up very quickly and start talking to me and saying, no, 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 but that didn't happen like that. It's because of that person did that. Oh, yes. And then I'm in the anger point. And then my writings start justifying. Yeah. And therefore, by placing the writings on a group structure, you're having other people able to support with different perspectives. And what's also great is that they're busy being supported. As you are writing out your experience, what is happening is Joe Soap might come along and say, no, but you know, he did it wrong. And then another group member might say, hey, Joe, look at what you just wrote there. So it's for each person, again, a point of change. Doesn't matter who has been walking the process for how long. Each person is in their writing immediately seeing, oh, wait, there I wrote from a reaction or from that aspect. So I would strongly suggest that, you know, because specifically is for the first year or two, whatever, you really scraping, not just, you're not even yet working with the information necessarily that is there within you. You're first learning how to get to the information, because for a lot of people that come and write on the forums or do our courses, the mind is so, like you could almost say the person is in a possessed state with something. And to get through that requires specific support.
Very cool. Do you want to add anything to that question, Kim?
Well, basically, the way that I've experienced this point is that I have been very resistant in the beginning, especially to say anything within the group atmosphere, or be, for instance, spontaneous in my replies and in my wordings, because I was so afraid of being called out on something. I mean, but it was funny because at the same time, I wouldn't even know what I'd be called out for. There was just this fear inside of myself of, okay, if I express myself now, maybe someone's going to say, oh, but you're wrong, or that's not correct, or you're not seeing it right, or whatever, which was basically an ego point that I had to transcend, because I'm sabotaging myself from being able to see that the idea that I've created of myself in my mind is not actually correct. So, I mean, if you're gonna walk the process of self-change, obviously you have to, at some point, make the decision to open up for change. You know, to see that the current way that I'm living or existing is not who I really am, or is not who I really can be and become.
Yeah, so to add to what Kim said there, eventually you're going to have to leave your room. You know, a lot of people who have joined us who go and do it themselves, get themselves in some cases so wind up into a specific personality that they now think is what's best for them, to avoid looking at the actuality of what they're experiencing. That months later or years later they come back to the forum and they go, hi, now I want to really, you know, write things out. So you have to eventually, in the world, interact with people. I mean, it's one thing to have this persona that you're writing on your computer. Yes, I'm this, I'm that. Oh, great. Okay, I'm feeling more stable. But by communicating with people on the forums and writing out and writing even a blog, you're having people interact back. So you're actually having to live your words. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would also say this point of walking with others, you also realize that I'm not personally flawed. Like I'm especially, that's what I thought when I joined Desteni, that I was especially fucked. Like really, literally, that's what I experienced. And then when you start sharing and you start reading other people's blogs, you realize that they're exactly the same as you. And then it's like, it's not so personal anymore. You start seeing, hey, there's something else going on. It's not just me in my life and my life experience and my family story. It could also be self-pity. You know, I've had this most horrible life of all human beings in the whole world, so I get to pity myself for the rest of my life. and then you start realizing the lives of others and what they've experienced. And then also, through walking with the group, you can also do the as without, so within, in that you start using and seeing the mirrors of other people, in, for example, reacting to people and seeing, okay, whoops, I'm reacting, I have to bring that back to myself. And I can share, you know, when I first joined Desteni on the Desteni Farm, the first thing that I did was that I wrote this very long, very beautiful, very spiritual poem. I'm a crystal and a diamond, and it was really, and then someone just posted a comment and said, wow, your mind talks a lot. And in that moment, I experienced this like my whole like idea of myself just collapsed, because I thought that I had joined this group and I had really shown how spiritually awakened I was, and then they just said, wow, your mind talks a lot. And that assisted me to kind of come down from my high horse in my mind and like come back to the earth. And that's basically why it's so important to walk in the group, as Andrea was saying, because we actually assist each other to come back to reality. Yeah. So Masana says, thank you, ladies.
And I'd like to add, wait, one point.
Go ahead.
Wait.
This was just saying what Masana was saying. Thank you.
So I'd just like to add, with regards to the walking in the group and sharing yourself, is that what I've found is that it actually feels really good to come down from your ego cloud, because it's like you don't realize it, but while you're in that state, you're like completely tense and locked inside yourself, basically isolated. And then when you have that breakthrough of actually realizing, like, oh my God, I'm just in this huge ego state that's not even real, then it's like a sigh of relief that happens. But I mean, while you're in that state, you are petrified of being called out and being wrong and, you know, falling down from that cloud. But once you do, it's actually a very great and very relaxing, so to speak, experience.
Although a bit painful.
That's what I want to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Initially.
Okay, so I want to talk to you guys about the solutions. But first we have another question from Andres. And he's asking, how am I able to know that I'm really changing myself? So how do I know that I'm changing myself?
What I would say here, hello Andres, first. What I would say here is, in relation to self-forgiveness and self-change, what you are looking at here is, because you are working first of all with experiences that come up in the mind, like thoughts and behavioral changes and mood swings and energies that come up, what you'll find first of all is, as you do your writings and you structure them and you do your self-forgiveness, remember, self-forgiveness is very much about taking responsibility for that which you've accepted and allowed within yourself. So how you start experiencing the change point, first of all, on that level, is where you actually, first of all, will start behaving differently in your life, meaning if what was happening to you, like in my example, was anger reactions to things, if I've walked that anger point clearly with self-forgiveness, and I've explored the different dimensions of it, and I really realize I'm not serving myself by allowing myself to be this anger and this anger reaction, and I let go in that, and I forgive myself, the change immediately took place. And first of all, that the energetic reaction of anger, that energy that was behind it, was diffused. So what I would then notice is, in my writings, for example, I would do self-forgiveness, that I'm angry if somebody said, oh, you don't look nice in that dress. If I wrote out the self-forgiveness effectively around that energetic experience, what I would notice is, next time if somebody says to me, hey, that dress doesn't fit you right, then the movement doesn't come up, or doesn't come up as much. So those are the first things you start noticing, is that those experiences inside of yourself where you were writing the self-forgiveness about starts changing and becoming less in it. obviously in the beginning, which a lot of people are concerned about, it doesn't just for some go away. For some it does. You have these aha self-forgiveness moments where you're just like, and the point stops. But for most of us, it's a gradual thing, because for some, you've programmed that energy experience into your body. So what you have to do is you have to stick to the self-forgiveness of, when I'm in that situation, again, I stop and I breathe. So somebody says, that dress doesn't look nice. If a movement still comes up, I remind myself that it's just an energy build-up in the physical. I stop, I breathe. This is now where you start noticing changes taking place. And then you're going to start noticing that more and more your points of, for example, anger in different scenarios will start changing, because you've, in that moment, taken responsibility for it, or in your writing, you expanded. So the changes also then start taking place where you then make different decisions. Your life changes because you don't give in to anger points. Like in my life, if I had gone with the anger points, if I had not been here doing what I'm doing now, I think I would have been in the system working as like this white light worker to try and make myself feel like I'm a good person, but I actually at night would have gone to like headbanging clubs and listen to rock music, because I can actually look at the timeline of my life and what I would have become. So those, as your choices will start changing, because you don't move with the energy, you don't make a decision and then get that guy. And that's actually what determines your life choices, which is what that person becomes in the system that we're looking at, going, look how angry that guy was, he shot his wife. Remember, that guy became that because he followed decisions, he followed internal experiences. So your own internal experiences, you see, start changing, and you start making different choices until you stop and you hear.
Cool explanation, Andrea. So, Andres, let us know if you're satisfied with that answer, if something is not clear about it. So, guys, let's start talking about the solutions. So this entire as within, so without. How can we start empowering ourselves with this realization? How can we work with this realization to expand it further, so that we can start seeing that what is within me is manifesting what is without, the chaos, the mayhem, and how can I use that in my process of self-change? Kim, do you want to go first?
Sure. So this is, in a way, coming back to the, I think, first point that we discussed with the self-empowerment, but that was the second point, where you feel self-empowered within the realization that my outside world is my internal world. So in terms of practical solutions for this problem of not realizing the point of as within, so without, is, for instance, walking a process of practically applying the writing and the self-forgiveness and self-correction, and living that decision of I will realize myself as this statement and principle of as within, so without. Because, I mean, simply realizing the principle, like in one moment, realizing like, oh my God, this is how it is, I can't believe it, no matter how profound it may feel in that moment, is not enough to actually live the statement. So what does it mean to live the statement, and to, from the living of that statement, actually create something, create a world that is a representation and manifestation of that statement that you lived. So that is basically what we're presenting with Desteni and the Desteni tools and the DIP Lite and DIP Pro, is a practical step-by-step process that you can walk to for yourself realize how to be and become this living principle of as within, so without, which is one side of the solution. The other side of the solution would be, for instance, finding ways to actually implement systems within or outside structures in the world, so that people can have a platform to walk this process of realizing themselves as self-responsible beings, which, in terms of political, economic structures, etc. But I will allow Andrea to continue on further with that point.
Yeah, I mean, this ties in again with what the question that was asked earlier in relation to, you know, is it suggested to work with a group? Here we covered the point of my individual process that's been supported by and with the group. And you know, here you also see that by working with the group, we are also working together on solutions where we can see, okay, look, we would like everybody to be able to, you know, be themselves, improve themselves, you know, have water, food, all of that. So all of the current world problems that we see and understand, we want to be able to make it possible for everybody to change themselves. So within that, you know, we've implemented, for example, if we look at the individual processes, we've implemented the free courses, we've been, you know, got the forums that people can come and participate on, and then from there we've got, you know, other courses that people can come and join, sponsorship and things like that to do the courses. And then from there on, when you're participating with the group while busy changing yourself, you can work on changing world systems. And that means as you are changing yourself, you're also moving out into your, as Kim said, your relationships are changing. Then you start, as you live the principle, you are able to go out more, and who you are. I mean, people around you are not necessarily going to go, wow, look at this person. Wow, there's something about her. I'm going to change. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you, regardless, live the principles, but your community, you're going to find community and friends, and your decisions, your life choices are going to change because of who you are and how you're changing. And at the same time, you can participate with a group in coming together and having discussions and chats where we've got projects that we're busy with to change economic problems and so forth. So, you know, those are ways that we can all work with ourselves and the world and the inside and outside.
Cool. I would also say that after the initial shock, I actually have a lot of fun with this principle in terms of looking and seeing and finding all the ways that what is within me and how my mind is manifested and in other people as well is the same as what exists in the world system. It can actually be a real fun game that you can do with yourself. But obviously, as Kim was saying, that as long as we don't want to realize that, it's going to be this, you know, this secret and this tenseness that you don't want to go there. There's going to be this resistance. But once you push through that and you get over that, it can actually be a lot of fun because it is what it is. You know, it's not going to change. We're not going to go away. The problems are not going to go away. We have to face it anyway. So why not have fun with it? Obviously, it's serious and we have to take it seriously, but that doesn't mean we can't have fun with it. And then another tip that I have that I've used very deliberately in my process is to be deliberate in saying we. So when I talk about something that happens in the world, I don't say they are fighting wars over there in Iraq or that kind of people, because I know that it is me, it's a part of me. So by deliberately beginning and pushing myself to saying we are fighting wars in Iraq, we are raping people, it brings the point back to myself in realizing that I am a part of it and I am responsible for it, and it also takes the personal dimension sort of out in realizing that it's something that we're doing collectively, all of us together. So that's like a very practical tip that I could suggest in terms of expanding this realization for oneself, in seeing that we are all a part of the same world, and we're all doing it to ourselves. So guys, before we finish this hangout for today, do you have any other tips or suggestions for anyone who is new to process and maybe is new to this principle of as within, so without?
No, a tip that I can give, which I find a lot of people experience, two things that I can highlight here. Some people who join our forums and join or start with the free online course, they experience this this realization of, okay, I'm going to change me, and there's problems in the world, and I should work on myself, or they start seeing problems within how they're experiencing themselves, and now they come to the forums. But now everything, their writings and everything is so jumbled up like there's various experiences in your mind. You're thinking about these 5 problems, and then this comes up, and this emotional experience overtakes you. And then it becomes overwhelming to even sit down and write in the forum. And then one tends to want to impress the group by writing these beautiful writings. And a lot of people actually drop out or stop, or they email, they go quiet, and then they email one of us saying, you know, I just don't know how to write because it must be perfect and it must reflect that I'm busy changing, but I don't. This is really where, you know, we made the free online course. You have the privacy and the space to daily just log on in your own time. There's no time requirements. You just practice writing, and your moderator will give you feedback. Okay, I suggest, you know, the requirement was this in the question, so just focus a bit more on this and this and this. So it'll really probe you in various ways to expand your writings. Even on the forums, don't worry if you're saying, look, I don't even make sense of my own experience, I'm just writing for now. Because what we do in the group is each day there are moderators on the forum that will take your writings and assist and say, okay, here you can expand, talk more about this or more about that. So it's not this, because a lot of people look at some of the people in the group and they go, I must talk and write like them. Does that mean, you know, and they don't even have the information, they don't even know how to access or how to start. So another example also that you can use is if you have difficulty stabilizing your mind enough to look at your own internal experiences, you can look at external world points and go, okay, I see there in the newspaper that that man shot his wife in anger. Let me write about myself within that. So if I was this man, why would I shoot my wife? Okay, he was angry because he became jealous because he thought she was sleeping around. So now I'm looking at jealousy point. You see, so you just write from her experience. What was she experiencing? Him? What did he go through? What was his childhood like? What emotions, feelings, what were his major personalities that contributed? And so you are writing as those people, and then you look inside yourself and go, oh, the jealousy point exists within me. There it is, that. And so one eventually becomes closer and closer to oneself in intimacy to really explore your own point, so that then when you start writing, you start going, okay, today I experienced this. I want to hit that man over the head for taking my parking spot. So just join us and come and have fun. And if at times on the forums you either find you thinking that it's too intense or somebody says something, just realize we're not there to bully or criticize or judge or anything. The support is very specific, and what we're saying is very direct support. We're not doing it to go, oh, look at that guy, he got that wrong. It is just clear to the point. It's assistance. So join us and just walk with us, and we will support you through it.
Very cool suggestions, Andrea. Kim, do you have any tips or suggestions here before we finish for today?
Well, basically, Andrea put it very well. All I have to say with that is that, you know, just enjoy the process of investigating yourself. As Andrea said, it's actually a lot of fun to place yourself in other people's shoes and to investigate all the dimensions of how you actually exist. So just see the forum and the support on the forum of all the people there as actually what it is, just support for you in your process of self-investigation, and not in any way a point of comparison, because what you're doing by comparing yourself is simply inferiorizing yourself to those other people, which is completely unnecessary, because you're just sabotaging yourself within your own process of self-enjoyment and self-expression and self-investigation. So, you know, join the forum, have fun. That's basically my message for tonight.
Good tip. So guys, thank you so much for being here. We will be back next Thursday, and the topic will be redefining words and becoming the living word. And we have another surprise guest coming up from the farm. So stay tuned, and we will be back next Thursday. Kim and Andreas, thank you so much for being here. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.